Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello.
I am your host for this webinar. My name is Edward Yabot Abubakar Ali Dauda, and a co-host is Dr. Ms. Gun Castle. If you don't mind, could you say hello to the audience?
Hello. Hi. My name is Ms. Bunkasu, and thank you for asking me to join.
All right, brilliant. Thank you for your time, and we will just get into the webinar. We're starting with the PowerPoint presentation, so exactly what it is we intend your project to be about. This is the introduction to your bipartisan project. A mix of soft power and group economics approach to harness the full value chain of fiscal policy, harnessing the aspirations and ambitions of Blacks, Africans, Nigerian women, and youths. Inclusive growth, global plus local policy equals local legacy. In this webinar, we're doing a disclaimer. The content, ideas, and concepts as put together displayed in this webinar are property of HPR UK Limited. The content displayed are solely for the intended private audience and not for public use. Please do not share without permission. Thank you very much. So the introduction and contents, challenges, issues raised at meeting, proposed solutions, introductory video of your project, memorandum of understanding, a tour of the website, action plan, project online campaign video, and then we will be concluding the webinar. So what is Agaioec? Agaioec, African Global Atlantic and Indian Ocean Economic Forum, is the global closed-door event that brings together the concentration of innovative minds, influential energy, institutions, and our collective resource for the resolution of our common challenges. To build a more befitting future through global Black group economics as our global Black community's core foundation. Agaioec is the operational mill. What is Agaioec? A global institution, African Global Atlantic and Indian Ocean Economic Council is an institutional system of Black and African short-term self-sustainability, long-term viability, and thriving sovereign organization of economic unity to promote the global Black community's interests. Agaioec is the strategy and policy regulator. Agaioec will have permanent locations across the diaspora and the African continents to ensure local and global interests are protected. What is Agaioec and Agaioec? The global closed-door event Agaioec will bring together the like minds, as earlier on stated, and the concentrations of minds. So this aspect has two parts to it. That's the pre-economic forum and the actual economic 7 days economic forum. The pre-economic forum is to lobby the diasporans for keen interest into the African market, especially the fact that we have done our research and found that the brands and our strategic partners, our target market and target demographic group, do not have an actual physical presence on the African continent. So Agaioec is an economic forum where we would be harnessing them as a power investment community into the 4 economic blocks on the African continent, which is the West Economic Bloc, ECOWAS, Central African Economic Bloc, Eastern African Economic Bloc, and the Southern African Economic Bloc. It's a mutual investment PPP initiative whereby they would come into the African market, as well as Africans will key into the diaspora market, completing the full fiscal policies and production chain, where from manufacturing, say on the African continent, the actual products and goods and services that will be needed in the diaspora as well as on the African continent. So what are the challenges? Locally, for instance, in Nigeria, there's the challenge of security where recently the defensive advocates for a holistic reforms. So this certainly is key in combating the actual menace of terrorism in Nigeria. And then in the global perspective, we have the EU African migration crisis, which is a major disaster in relations between European countries and African countries. We also have, obviously in Nigeria, we have issues of kidnappings, as we can see, even the ADC the ADC's father-in-law of the president got kidnapped, and we give a lot of thanks to the professionalism of the Nigerian police and army who were able to rescue him from the insurgency, from the kidnappers, and get back to his family safely. And obviously, we also look at the fact that the Buhari Integrity Group is advocating for Al-Mustafa inclusion in the next cabinet of President Buhari. This is great news because your project actually has already envisioned Major Al-Mustafa to be a part of your project in line with the security aspects. The president has been very statesmanship in his approach to healing the wounds of the past. President Muhammadu Buhari recently gave a posthumous award to late MKO Abiola and Senator Kingibe, which was very soothing to the global Nigerian community, and it was overwhelmingly accepted on social media, where it trended for a couple of weeks. And in the global platform, in the 2020 elections of America, we can see that issues about healing wounds of the past, reparations for Black Americans, is coming to the forefront of the discourse online and in mainstream media. President Muhammadu Buhari is also the ECOWAS chairman, which makes it great for your project, considering your project is continuing the trend that President Muhammadu has already set about healing the wounds of the past, creating a conducive atmosphere and platform for the non-migrant Black diasporans who have lost touch with the African continent, either through the Arab slave trade or the cross-Atlantic slave trade. And so this is a great thing as well for us. And as you can also see, the EPA agreement with ECOWAS, Nigeria did not sign. The EPA agreement with the European Union, Nigeria did not sign that, as well as the African Free Trade Agreement, which Nigeria also did not sign. Oh, One more key aspect in why this is the right timing for this is the fact that President Muhammadu Buhari is also has been considered by his peers to head the anti-corruption um, commission of the African Union, which is a great deal of endorsement by his peers, fellow heads of states. And we know recently, as last year, he also urged the African diasporans to help fight corruption, which your project is designed in such a way that it would also aid in giving preferring solutions in combating financial capital flight from the African continent. It's very interesting what President Paul Kagame once said, and this is a quote from him. I would rather argue that we need to mobilize the right mindset rather than more funding. Africa has everything it needs in real terms, but Africans remain mentally married to the idea that nothing can get moving. Without external finance, we are even begging for things we already have. That is absolutely a failure of mindset. Very much agree with his statement, and as an elder statesman, we know he's speaking based on experience. And uh, globally, on Al Jazeera West Africa, this came up where the Russian president was quoted as saying, Africa is a cemetery for Africans. When an African becomes rich, his bank accounts are in Switzerland. He travels to France for medical treatment. He invests in Germany. He buys from Dubai. He consumes Chinese. He prays in Rome or Mecca. His children study in Europe. He travels to Canada, USA, Europe for tourism. If he dies, he will be buried in his native country of Africa. Africa is just a cemetery for Africans. How could a cemetery be developed? It's quite interesting for us to be able to embrace constructive criticism, and also your project is designed to address such criticisms. Okay, so this is the great aspect about this year is President Muhammadu Buhari. In his victory of the elections, he has also promised to include more women and youth in his new cabinet, which everybody is excited for. The APC youth have asked for 40% of appointment in the second term. Currently, I have no political ambitions. So we are looking at having the best minds be a part of preferring solutions and aiding President Muhammadu Buhari to achieve his legacy, his befitting global legacy. Your project is designed to harness the best of minds globally and also pull in the capital resources and see ways of doing public-private partnerships and bringing new businesses into the continent, creating jobs, as well as investing in the diaspora inner cities and creating jobs for the diasporan blacks, thus creating a global legacy befitting for President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osibanjo. Like on CNN, it's been said that the Africa's secret weapon is the diaspora. And that is key because Nigeria alone sent 22 billion US dollars into the Nigerian economy in 2017. And we have also seen on social media African Americans who have been dislinked from their heritage of the African continent through the slave trade, slave Atlantic trade, which we have earlier on mentioned, have done petitions where they were asking to seeking asylum to African countries. unfortunately, we don't have a befitting country where we can be able to be truly proud of, that has every basic amenities for human living. There's also an issue as well with the European Parliament passing a watershed resolution calling for reparations for crimes against Africa during European colonization, and also the issues about presidential candidates in the 2020 elections. Reparations has become mainstream for the chattel slavery of the cross-Atlantic slave trade. The Manufacturing Association of Nigeria has been really vocal about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and how much it has to offer, as well as how much it would undermine the industrialization of Nigeria. Nigeria is not a signatory to the African Free Trade Agreement, and thus this gives us an opportunity to prefer solutions which your project actually puts on the table. We are keen about manufacturing and industrialization, and we are also looking at the fact that our target market, our target demographic group are only African Americans, with 14% of the US population, with a consumer spending power of 1.54 trillion US dollars as at 2018. Considering the largest economy on the African continent is Nigeria, and Nigeria's economy is estimated at 580 billion US dollars. The African Americans don't have natural resources, neither do they have major land. What they do is they work, predominantly gain wages, and spend it on goods, services, and products. This is the challenges of the African continent with regards to corruption. We see yearly 192 billion US dollars capital flight out of the continent. What we intend to do is design a project which would harness the Nigerian diaspora's remittance into the Nigerian economy for holistic, organic, rural community sustainable infrastructural development, as well as the African continent and the diaspora's power investment community into the African market. Do you have any questions so far, Dr.
No. No, I'm listening still.
Okay, right, brilliant. A recent report by the World Bank shows that the Nigerian economic performance stagnated from 1995 to date. And clearly, this is a major issue because this shows that we would need new mines, new businesses to actually get into the Nigerian economy and the African continent in order to drive the African economy and markets forward. The Nigerian diaspora in 2018, which is great news, remitted 25 billion US dollars. So it is $3 billion more than the Nigerian diaspora remitted in 2017. However, we are also looking at the global economy as well and the global key players, and we see that the volatility in the global market is an issue of concern, with the Nigerian external reserve actually hit 44 billion mark due to oil price peaks. However, by the beginning of 2019, Nigeria lost $196 million from its foreign reserves due to this volatility in the global market. Once again, we see from the British Council a report about Nigeria's 30 years of economic stagnation. And what is interesting globally is a report in 2016, an RTI capital statement from Lord Rothschild, which stated, "The central bankers continue what is surely the greatest experiment in monetary policy in the history of the world. We are therefore in uncharted waters, and it is impossible to predict the unintended consequences of very low interest rates." Now, this is interesting considering that the volatility of the global fiat market is very fragile, and clearly with the USA trade wars, Brexit, and the EU deadlock is threatening the global markets, especially also the US-China trade wars. Locally, there has been concerns by governors about the newly elected governors should start embracing themselves for financial recession, which was voiced by Zamfara State Governor Alhaji Abdulaziz Yari. However, on the brighter side, globally, our analysis shows that the microfinance market of the Russian Federation has been peculiarly very interesting on how they have been able to have growth under sanctions and how they have been able to manage the microfinance market of the Russian Federation, which will be key for your project to tap into such knowledge in managing the microfinance of the different projects your project will be executing. Very key is creating a robust financial team. The CBN governor shortlisted is Aisha Ahmed, who seems to be the favorite to replace the current CBN governor, which is great considering the promise of the president of the inclusion of women in his cabinet. And also, we are looking that your project has these impressive women who are heading several banks in Nigeria as a ministerial management team in microfinance, and to create an impressive fiscal policy for the Federal Republic of Nigeria moving forward, and be able to look into how they can prefer solutions to better the African continent and counter the proposals of the African Free Trade Agreement, in whichever regards to rectify it to suit the concerns of the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria. There is also challenges of the influence of African Americans, the promotion of non-black brands, which is a cause of capital flight out of the African economy, because African Americans do influence Africans. The brands they promote are brands which Africans actually spend large sums of money to purchase and import into the country. This causes actual capital flight from the African continent. Our target demographic group, as you can see, have been very keen on getting into the African market, as at last year, Black Hollywood, which was basically Black celebrities, actors, actresses, and singers, all went for the Full Circle Festival in Ghana, 2018 December. This was the first time such an event happened, and it was very successful. We also need to have in mind African Americans' loyalty to brands. They're far more loyal than Caucasians, and thus, therefore, this is a key interest on how to leverage emotional intelligence and loyalty to brands for your project to be a success. Issues raised at the meeting in Abuja were concerns about the 3 days pre-economic forums and how it should be scrapped from the project. However, considering that our key demographic market as well as our target demographic group are in the diaspora, the pre-economic forum is designed into the project as a foundation core, and thus it needs to be there. It needs to be seen as we on the continent are keen in doing business with our diasporan sisters and brothers. They are in a very much relaxed position. They're spending 1.5 trillion US dollars as mentioned earlier. They're not moving per se, so we need to work together and we need to meet them in their place of comfort so we can assure them that getting into the African market, we will create for them an enabling business environment and give them specific incentives to heal the wounds of the past. This keen interest should be demonstrated. I have already spoken about is here on the slide, which is about the government of Nigeria to the diaspora community, specifically the strategic partners to diversify their portfolios into the African market through PPPs and mutual investments in the inner cities of Black diaspora neighborhoods through acquisitions of commercial properties for services and businesses. The rebranding of Nigeria as a beacon of sustainable solutions approach, an investment destination, innovation hub, and pioneering visionary leadership of His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari and His Excellency Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo. Do you have any questions so far?
I'm still listening. It's quite interesting. So.
Okay, brilliant. So also, it's the issue of Nigeria to the next level. Everybody's passionate about Nigeria moving to the next level. Specifically, the youths. We believe so much in President Muhammadu Buhari and the women as well. This is our chance to send a very strong message to the world about who we have entrusted with moving us to the next level. President Muhammadu Buhari, a befitting global legacy, and also moving Africa forward as a giant of Africa. We need to make sacrifices and push the industrialization of Africa. Your project will prioritize innovation, manufacturing, industrialization of Africa, cut African migration, cut government spending, and save taxpayers money. This is a win-win sustainable solution for Africa, Europe, the Americas, and world at large. Visionary leadership legacy. Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia establishing the 20th century Organization of African Union, May 1963, now called African Union. This is interesting because at the time it was really needed for this institution to be established. And Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia was keen on making sure this was established for the unity of African countries, which is a befitting legacy, and it continues till today to serve a great purpose for us as Africans. Visionary leadership, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria established in the 21st century Agaioec institutions, which will be an expansion of the African Union that will encompass the non-migrant diasporans. Now, the non-migrant diasporans are people who have lost their heritage through chattel slavery or through the cross-Atlantic slavery or through the Arab slave trade. This is key because we have seen a growing number of this specific demographic group who have the resources, the expertise, the standardization to contribute to the African continent. Here we are going to open up to the actual introductory video, which would showcase exactly what the economic forum will entail.
Sorry about the noise.
No worries.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hello, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right, okay. I thought it went off, so.
Thank you. Hope the introductory video was insightful. And if do you have any questions? Hello?
So what's the next step to make this
Yes.
happen on the ground?
Yes, we're getting to that because we want to take them through the website and things, the website, the presentations carrying on, and then we'll go through the website and then we'll go to the action plan, which will then conclude the webinar.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, brilliant. So now we're going to the MOU of the project. This is the MOU of the actual council, which is the interesting part of this project. Your project is designed in such a fashion that the African Global Atlantic Indian Ocean Economic Forum is to birth the African Global Atlantic Indian Ocean Economic Council, and this is the drafted MOU of the council. So the Council is a 21st century institution which will specifically focus on the economic and social cultural empowerment of the Aboriginal indigenous African people worldwide with 2 chambers of leadership. The upper chamber shall be reserved for the Sovereign Council of Monarchs, past heads of states, prime ministers, and presidents. The lower chamber shall be for the intellectuals, innovators, and best of all professional and entertainment talents globally. We have excelled in their various fields of endeavor. Our focus is on the implementation of 21st century technologies for collective, inclusive, organic, rural, sustainable African community development. And in the diaspora, collective, organic, inner cities, sustainable community development. Agaioec will introduce the diaspora Black people into the 4 economic blocks on the African continent as power investment communities, which is stated earlier on, in order to build a unity foundation through PPP mutual investments of global Black group economics concepts across the Atlantic and Indian Oceans for future generations. The African Global Atlantic and Indian Ocean Economic Council, a sovereign institution, will create the following sub-sovereign institutions: African Sovereign Wealth Fund for indigenous Aborigines on the continent and in diaspora, which is predominantly a bank; African Global Justice Courts; African Global Conservation of Nature, Aqualife, Animals, Forestry, and Oceans from pollution and drought. The African Global Atlantic and Indian Ocean Economic Stock Exchange, which would basically be the stock exchange of these new businesses coming in, and people will be able to buy into the stocks of the new businesses coming to the African continent worldwide. So this is the mission statement. The purpose of the MOU: to remove any tax exemption side of non-100% Black-owned companies operating on the continent, regardless of the location, being in rural and deprived communities. This preferential status will be reserved solely for 100% Black-owned companies, institutions, organizations, and associations, which will also be reinforced by the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So this is very interesting because this also helps with the concerns of the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement area, and make sure that the benefits of the free trade agreement is solely with Black people using the resources on the continent, creating the businesses and creating jobs and enjoying the entire chain of production from manufacturing to the end user, to the end consumers. establishing and reinforcing artifacts, wildlife, waters, and natural habitats protection laws to make it punishable for any domestic and foreign culprit who destroy the natural heritage of Africans. The sovereign military will include aggressive deterrence for space, cyberspace, biological, and nuclear warfare. All former presidents and heads of states and prime ministers shall be members of the Supreme Monarch Sovereign Council Chamber of Agaioec. Establish international judicial system, a court to settle disputes, corruption allegations, genocide, as well as ecocide and breach of laws. The court shall also have jurisdiction to address the challenges of land grabbing by foreign entities and individuals against indigenous Africans. Establishing a 21st century holistic well-being healthcare delivery institution to cater for the holistic well-being of Africans using alternative herbal remedies, technologies, and the availability of data from infant birth to death. The embassy shall provide diplomatic immunity for the African Global Atlantic and Indian Ocean Economic Council branches in the diaspora. Public-private partnerships between 100% Black-owned companies with a 45% public and 45% private stakes of all companies formed through the Economic Forum. 5% each from public and private stakeholders shall be issued to Black Wall Street companies of the specific African or diaspora economic bloc. All interest, profits, and funds of transactions made must use and be lodged in a 100% Black-owned bank and must use 100% Black-owned financial services. We also include in your project a 10% stake into the economic bloc will be closed for 30 years, after which the 10% stake will be subject to review or sale to prospective foreign investors. This 10% stake is for foreign investors who want to key into the new market that will be created by your project. This new market is valued at 800 billion British pounds, considering per annum we are seeing, and that is a conservative estimate, considering per annum we're seeing 1.5 trillion US dollars spending power of African Americans, 580 billion US dollars Nigerian economy, and obviously with the rest of the African economy as well. The Agaioec requires smart capital for the global community's sustainable development for a sustainable future, and this will include training, transfer of technology. The worth of this stake will also include, where possible, local currencies swaps. So while we're using the British pound sterling as our currency unit, it's because it's higher than the US dollars and it's higher than the euros. However, the contracts would use that as a value, but local currency swaps would also be an option as well. This way, it will promote the currencies and make sure that value remains the same and the standardization as well. We'll establish a headquarters bank stock exchange that shall depend on the AFC, the African Free Trade Agreement, Continental Free Trade Agreement on the continent, thus giving a strategic advantage to investors and companies within the institution. We've spoken about the implementation of technologies, sustainable solutions to all people of indigenous, aboriginal, African descent worldwide, and for the industrialization of the African continent. All natural raw minerals shall be processed to finished goods on the African continent for global export. We've also spoken about establishing branches worldwide, the sovereignty of the institution as at 2 levels, and strengthening the commitment through the African Standby Forces with professionalism and their capacity to ensure the sovereignty of the African continental seas, airways, and land. And thus, so on. These documents will be provided as well once it's inquired. So we'll move on to the next phase of this presentation. Human capital development begins in the womb, legacy institutionalization of continuity. This is very key because for inclusive growth on the African continent, we have heard discussions about how to develop the right programs from birth to the adult life that would ensure that the next generation and the current generation are able to work together in honoring our elders and giving our leaders a befitting legacy. Your project is designed in such a fashion that it looks at all these aspects of human capital development, honoring the elders as the youth work hand in hand, seeking advice and the wisdom of the elders, and giving the leaders a befitting legacy. We currently understand the aspirations of the First Lady and the First Lady, Her Excellency Aisha Buhari, in establishing President Buhari University. This is a great idea because establishing an institution with global standardization indigenously, your project already encompasses this aspect. We're also looking at the global aspect of your project, giving free service for Black parents, a startup parent box with necessities called Mama Kit. This is interesting because we also have a committee involved where the steering committee, will have looked into the average CEO's pay in the UK, and we've seen that the average CEO of organizations is between 100,000 to 250,000 pounds. We believe that the befitting amount for the steering committee, which we'll be looking at on the website, is £250,000 per annum with a 4-year actual contract. We're also looking at the aspects of benefits also of using our proposed sponsored vehicles, which are made in Africa vehicles, which is Inoso Vehicle Manufacturing and Kantanka of Nigeria and Kantanka of Ghana. These two vehicles will be the official vehicles of the council, both on the continent and in the diaspora. We believe the steering committee should be issued one SUV as well as one saloon vehicle as well as part of their benefits. Moving forward. So this is how the Mama Kit is designed to look like. As I spoke earlier, this is the estimate for the CEOs of organizations in the UK. So we'll be moving on to the website, and this is where we'll be looking at how the website, and there we go. So this is the website. It's offline. It's on a local server, but this is like how it's designed thus far. It's 90% complete, And so we have every aspect that we'll be looking into. We'll want to start with the strategic partners. Right. These are the strategic partners which we have now looked into. These are our target demographic group that we intend to pull into the African continent, especially in the diaspora. We have the African Union, ECOWAS, the EAC, CAC, SAD. These are the economic blocks on the African continent. African Exim Bank, the African Import-Export Bank, the African Development Bank, the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, CARI Bank, which is the Caribbean Bank, historical black colleges and universities. And so we'll be looking at all those lists of our target demographic group in the diaspora. The Black-owned banks we are looking into as being strategic partners are thus: One United Bank, Cover Federal Savings Bank, M&F Bank, City National Bank, United Bank of Philadelphia, Liberty Bank, Unity Bank, Tri-State Banks, Harbor Bank, Metro Bank. It's interesting, these banks don't operate on the African continent. So this is our target demographic with regards to bankers. With regards to businesses, it becomes far more interesting considering the businesses are in every sector that the African continent requires to move forward. And certainly these companies coming into the ECOWAS region, establishing in Nigeria, would take Nigeria to the next level. I believe the first company with a per annum revenue as at 2017 is Worldwide Technology, which was founded in 1990, and its revenue is 10.777.033 billion US dollars as at 2017. And the list goes on. Act One Group at 2 billion, Bridgewater at 2 billion, and they are of different sectors and services as well. Some are into manufacturing, some are into construction, some are into hospitality, some are into supplies and logistics, and none of these brands are on the African continent. They may have investments with other companies, however, their brands are not on the continent. And as what your project is doing is creating them to become multinational corporations by actually having physical footprint on the continent with their actual brands.
See you.
At request, if you would want to see it privately, you can inquire about this. We will give you the link, which you'll be able to see this in your own private time. The Black Historical Colleges and Universities, these are an interesting group because we can see some of them were actually founded before the amalgamation of the northern and southern protectorate of Nigeria. And these are very interesting universities considering the research they have done. And obviously, your project obviously takes care of the aspirations of the First Lady in establishing an institution, the President Muhammadu Buhari Institution University, institutionalizing the name locally of President Muhammadu Buhari by establishing an institution, a university in his name. These universities are key partners of your project, so they'll be able to give the best of global standards to such an institution. And there will be collaborations in research and technologies innovations, and also your project is also will give the students tasks of how to prefer solutions to actually get them driving the actual development from a tertiary institutional research base, competing globally as well, which will be fun for students. Very interesting stories about their founding of these universities, and several stories about innovations, Hampton University, several stories about innovations coming out of these institutions, Lincoln University, Morehouse. Tuskegee has a very interesting story to several innovations that came out of that university. And that's it for the universities. And now we come to the Black organizations and charities. These organizations are key because they hold the professional aspects of our target demographic group, as well as the emotional intelligence appeal to your project that will get everybody on board your project is found with these organizations, which will be able to do the actual grassroots campaigns for the establishment of the council and for the appeal to the masses for your project. Interesting, the National Medical Association, which was founded in 1895, is the collective interest of physicians and patients of African descent. Recently in Nigeria, there's been issues with the Minister of Health with regards of the healthcare delivery system in Nigeria. And as we are all well aware, this is not just peculiar to Nigeria. So many African countries' healthcare delivery systems are close to non-existent at this time due to they not being able to service the actual population. Black engineers, Black designers. This is very interesting. The financial credit unions as well. So this comes to the end of the actual. This comes to the end of the actual strategic partners. And so we'll head towards the leadership, starting with the financial leadership. This is the steering committee. So in every sector, we have a financial leader, a leader of the sector. So in this particular sector is the financial leadership committee. So this is the steering committee that would look at the financial policies, the MOUs, and things of such nature. These are people who would have taken so much time in their life to study finance. We mix them with elders as well as youths with no experience. This way, it's great for continuation of the projects. So it's elders with their wisdom and expertise with youths who predominantly don't have much experience or no experience whatsoever. Here, the leader of this is of the financial committee. We have we have seen Professor Pat Utomi is befitting for this for the leader of the steering committee on finance. And we know he's a professor of political economy and management expert. He's a fellow of Institute of Management Consultants of Nigeria and a former presidential candidate. Key interest as well in the diaspora is Dr. Claude Anderson, is president of Powernomics Corporation of America, Inc., and the Harvard Institute, Inc. Powernomics is a company that publishes his books and produces the multimedia presentations in which he explains his concept, Powernomics. Powernomics is a package of principles and strategies that explain race and offer a guide for Black America to become a more self-sufficient and economically competitive group in America. This is very interesting because this all clearly is what Africans globally aspire to, is self-sufficiency and being economically competitive. Hence why our research was able to put him on this committee. And then we have some controversial names as well as very befitting names of youth, a mix of youth as well as elders. Moving on to the legal leadership. In the legal leadership, we're looking at Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, as the leader of this committee. Clearly, we know who he is, and he is a Nigerian lawyer and human rights activist. He contested and lost the governorship election of Ekiti State in 2007 on the platform of the National Conscience Party. The party he served as national chairman in 2011. Another individual is David Drummond, who is an interesting individual, has officially been a part of Google for 15 years. But even before taking his first role at the company, he was working with Larry Page and Sergey Brin in his role as a partner at the law firm representing Google in its early days. This is interesting when it comes to copyright and when it comes to technology. Having such a heavyweight as part of the steering committee clearly is the reason why we have proposed £250,000 being given to each and every committee member as their annual salary and a 4-year contract, because we want to attract the best of minds to your project. Moving on from this, we would be going to the security leadership. In the security leadership, it's a more conservative committee, which is predominantly closed door, with only one civilian, who is Dr. Carl Oshodi, who's his PhD. We do have a bio of him, which upon request we'll be able to deliver it to you. He's into a lot about the military and sustainability in warfare, and clearly his his background is predominantly on reconciliation after warfare. The leader of the security leadership is Major General Ismaila Ilya, retired. He is a two-star general. He retired 2 years earlier because his service year came first, as he was admitted into the military school early. During his service years, he attended many courses, including the mandatory ones required of every rank. He went to the United States twice to do a course in his specialty, infantry, and when he was transferred to the police, he had to do a military police course and then did an airborne course. He was in France on comparative staff college course, which the French considers their war college. Having finished from Jaji, where few are selected to travel out of the country as comparative in preparations for teaching at Jaji. In terms of appointment and work, he attended 3 United Nations missions, with the first at Lebanon in the year 1979 for the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, after the Israeli invaded the southern part of Lebanon and eventually withdrew, but a force was required to fill the void. It was an interesting mission because he was a young officer. He also was in Rwanda during the genocide in 1994 for the United Nations Assistance Mission in Rwanda. Arguably, the mission was one of the most challenging in the history of the United Nations. At the time, he was the operations officer for the observer group that was deployed there. And by the time the genocide started, it was like hell broke loose. The third United Nations mission was in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He later returned to DRC to meet the residual issues of Rwanda and Congo, sharing the same border. It's very interesting, his acumen. Certainly, he's a soldier of a soldier, and when he retired, eventually, the African Union also reached out to him. He was employed as a member of capacity building consultants under the African Peace Facility with the Peace and Security Department of the African Union, while working with relevant agencies of the European Union and the African Union, working within a team of 3 people. They were able to upgrade the style of African peace security architecture of the African Union. He was drafted to work on the African Standby Force. Major General Samaila Ilya, retired, was made the director of the various exercises which led to the operationalization of the force in 2015, thus meeting the requirements of the African heads of state and government. This is very interesting because clearly we are looking at making sure that those we are inviting into the African market, our target demographic group, are rest assured that security will certainly not become an issue when they bring in their investment. Major General Samaila Ilya is certainly someone who would give enough confidence to the power investment community of the diaspora into the African continent. Another key person is Major General Ronke Kale, retired, trained a medical practitioner before she decided to enlist in the Nigerian Army as an officer. She The first female hostel in the Nigerian Defense Academy, Kaduna, was commissioned for how many female students? And as for the curious medical professionals, Major Nekali's area of specialty is psychiatry. Her psychiatry was inspired to join psychiatry by the late medical giant Professor Thomas Adioye Lambo, Africa's first professor of psychiatry. And this is very interesting, her background as well, considering that we certainly want to promote women as well as men in every field of endeavor. So this is the list as well of the security leadership. As you can see, Major Hamza Al Mustafa is on the list, considering the concern of the Buhari Integrity Group, which had spoken about the insurgency in Nigeria and due to security concerns to get Major Hamza Al Mustafa into the cabinet. Your project had already thought about this, and it was designed to actually get the best minds together and working together to deliver a befitting global legacy to President Muhammadu Buhari, as you can see from this list. We are of the idea that the armed forces could not be reformed by civilians on the outside. It would have to be, and other agencies, it will have to be by those who have headed those agencies to go back to their juniors and actually do the in-house cleansing. And that's basically all I would have to say on that. We'll be moving on now to sustainable agriculture. Yep. Sustainable agriculture and food production systems and distribution systems leadership, where we have Dr. Ms. Gon Kasul Kojam. She's Ethiopian. We've drafted her for her great actual research for her PhD at Newcastle University, where she submitted a thesis which looked into policy, sustainable food security, and well-being in Ethiopia. Ethiopia has the second largest population on the African continent after Nigeria and has been plagued with famine in the past. Dr. Ms. Gonkaso's tremendous research, vast reaching network, and wealth of experience on the subject of holistic well-being and organic permaculture agriculture is vital for the long-term sustainable homegrown organic food security of the African continent. We're pleased to tell the audience that Dr. Kasu is here and co-hosting with us. I don't know if you would like to say a few words, Dr. Kasu.
Yes. Hello, I'm here.
I don't know if you would like to say a few words about your research into sustainable food security and well-being.
You've said it basically, but I was mainly assessing the relationship between chemical use in food producing sectors and organic farming. So I was comparing the two, and I worked with farmers closely to find out the results. So basically, most farmers now in Ethiopia do use chemical fertilizer and improved seeds. So I have asked them if it has actually improved their food security status, and they did say it does increase food productivity using these technologies. However, it has some side effects as well, such as the dependency of using these technologies. So it's not just producing food, it is what kind of food we produce, and are farmers free to use their own seed. So it has many political and social effects as well.
Oh, that's interesting. Are there alternatives to organic farming instead of using chemical means?
At the moment now, most farmers now in Ethiopia are and have been using this technology. So when you talk to them, they say we can't really get out of this yet. So it has to be like a system how they withdraw themselves from using these technologies, and then obviously organic farming and using compost type. That's mainly for gardening, but for big farms, you're looking at a bigger scale of withdrawing from using this chemical.
Okay, that's interesting. Certainly, we'll be looking forward to hearing more from you about this in the project, and certainly, I believe it's going to be interesting for us to be able to establish sustainable, organic community food securities in different local, rural communities and nationwide, as well as continental wide. Moving forward, um, we would be looking at infrastructure systems. And system implementation leadership. We have keyed with Dr. Engineer Akibe Ali. Unfortunately, he couldn't co-host with us today because he's very busy. And he has been very, like Dr. Ms. Gunn, he has contributed tremendously to this project. We have looked into how to have the right minds for this project, and also have the youth also participate in um, building the most sustainable infrastructure on the continent. So this is the list here of um, all those, which is a mix of elders, technocrats who have companies already doing manufacturing, and also youth. We have the chairman of Rapsin, the chairman of Inoso Vehicle Manufacturing there, and these are people who are already doing tremendously great things. And also we have Mr. Jalani Aliyu, DD, National Automobile Design and Development Council, who was drafted by President Muhammadu Buhari to come back home and head that council, considering his tremendous heights he achieved in America. And when it comes to technologies and smart mobile technologies, we have all the CEOs of the smartphones technologies in Nigeria. About Dr. Engineer Kibe Ali, he's a founder and CEO of Obinter Corporations, consists of Beyond Innovation 21st Century Global Futuristic Enterprises aimed at disrupting old classical paradigms of goods and services delivery, as well as offering provision and perspectives with cutting-edge technologies, primarily in emerging and developing economies, by creative synergy with more democratized entities in a highly networked and hyper-integrated world. That's great. We also have Amanda Span, a powerhouse CMO in pedology. She was part of a group that organized one of the first hackathons. She's more into IT, tip hubs. She's leading a community specifically supporting entrepreneurs in Africa and the African diaspora. Her consultancy Span and company, she focuses on helping fellow African American founders build their brands. This is also an interesting fellow of Nigerian descent. Mr. Ade Olono is a seasonal entrepreneur. In 2006, he founded Form Spring. In 2019, he founded Formstar. 2014, he launched his latest venture, Gel, a productivity platform for remote teams. Will Lucas founded a marketing technology company. Majora Carter is a very interesting fellow. She founded one of the 100 most creative people in business. At that time, she was transforming a dumping ground into a park. We also have Kimberly Bryant, Imechi Achibong of Nigerian descent. He works at Facebook. John Thomlinson resume includes some of the biggest names in tech: IBM, Symantec, and Microsoft. Co-founder and Laura Whitman Powers, Dr. Courtney Ryan Ziegler, Transfer Walker, Luvia Ajayi, Catherine Finney, as some of those that are part of our prospective committee that would be into this particular department: infrastructure and systems implementation leadership. Very interesting committee based on sustainable technology procurement, infrastructure technology procurement, quality control implementation, maintenance, research and development leadership. The the most the most on this project is the education and media leadership committee, headed by Professor Wole Soyinka, who is a Nigerian playwright, poet, essayist. He was awarded the 1986 Nobel Prize in Literature, as everybody is well aware. And we also have keenly Dr. Joy DeGrow, who is a national and international renowned researcher, educator, author, and presenter. She is an ambassador for healing and a voice for those who have struggled in search of the past and continue to struggle through the present. Dr. Joy is the acclaimed author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Injury and Healing, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, the study guide, with a second book in the works. Her degree and her pedigree in psychology is a very interesting aspect when it comes to education and how we would want to create 21st century academic curriculum. As we see, we have this list is filled with big weights from both sides of the Atlantic, and we have youth as well with no experience that would learn from the elders, honoring the elders and giving our leaders a befitting legacy. And finally, amongst the committee is the Holistic Wellness, Healthcare, Lifestyle Delivery System, and Centers Leadership. Dr. Okeme Arome, he is of Kogi State, studying medicine at University of Jos. He's currently the General Doctor of Africa Rural Clinics. It's peculiar because he is more into medical delivery in rural communities. And this is an interesting approach which could be upgraded could be upgraded to a well-being welfare of the global Black community. And then we head to the council leadership. This here has to do with the chairperson, the vice chairperson. Here we're looking at the actual US chapter. Here we have chairperson as Mrs. Kelechi Njoku Madu. She has also been a very great inspiration and has contributed a lot to the project. Vice chairperson, Mr. Morris Onwoku. He has also been of great inspiration and contributed to the project. And we have in the UK chairperson, Dr. Mr. Dean Okai and Vice Chairperson Victoria Walker. So we go to the chairpersons, Ambassador Philip Ali Dowda, a seasonal diplomat, as the chairperson, and the vice chairperson, Ambassador Evangelist Mrs. Deborah Elia, the current Nigerian envoy to the Democratic Republic of Congo. That has it for the website. As you can see, a lot of research has been done into the website, putting all the data together to give you this website as it is. It's 90% complete. We still are putting more data and updating data as we go by. So we'll move on back to the PowerPoint presentation. Brilliant. So why Agaioec, the process of an all-purpose Nigerian upliftment through resources as a precursor of worldwide Black and African empowerment, and Agaioec, a restorative system for catalysts, Black universal empowerment, home and away. I'm sure the question would come: why not use the African Union to achieve this initiative? The reason why is the African Union rejected Haiti as permanent member due to location, and that was in its charter. And this rejection happened. The statement happened on the 17th of May. I believe it was in 2016, and they actually used the Charter Article 29.1 of the AU Constitution as basis for their decision to reject Haiti. Haiti is the first Black republic, gained its independence 215 years ago. This is very crucial when we're considering our African countries also gained independence in the 50s and 60s. The scale of the project entails the urgency of its time and timing, which is now informed by skill set deficit within the structures of our economy, global competitiveness, challenges in Africa and the diaspora, the long overdue need for capacity building across the spectrum of society, awareness of Black and Africa's positional strengths and weaknesses in global microeconomics. That's the mission. Our purpose. Project Agaioec will serve to build inspiration for worldwide Black community, capacity within the Black world, legacy for the Black world, generational wealth in worldwide Black humanity, streamline operation strategy to advance productive efficiencies across the borders, latitude of worldwide Black social, economic, and political initiatives. Procedures. The timeline of the forum. 2019. We haven't given specific dates for your projects due to we need your approval moving forward and your support for us to be able to establish dates for which we would be able to continue our research and continue the grassroots. There's a lot of work to be done, reaching out to the strategic partners, and clearly would need government support. Specifically, we would need not to be a part of, not to have all the bureaucratic bottlenecks. Yes, it's a bipartisan project. we are aware about the fact that the next cabinet, there's been issues about having a nationalist cabinet, which it's been stated that this might affect the APC ruling party in 2023. We beg to defer on that because we believe this kind of an initiative and project would actually be strengthening the APC party in 2023, considering that they will be able to recruit within the oppositions and get the best minds, and everybody would be rest assured that APC is a party that deals specifically with delivering the best to Nigerians and has the interest of all Africans and the diaspora at heart. So this is the webinar presentation. Thank you for listening and your time. Sorry it took a while. However, we needed to cover every aspect of your project so you would be able to see it here. And if for more inquiries, please do reach out to us. We'll be happy to answer any queries.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you.
Okay, thank you. So,
Thank you. Bye.
right.